Carthage was a thriving metropolis in its day. This African metropolis would have rivaled Rome in her heyday, with a cosmopolitan population of some 750,000 people and the wealth of an immense empire at its disposal. Don't forget to subscribe to Ancient History for fascinating insights into the mysteries of the ancient world and captivating historical narratives. Even though Carthage had modest origins, it would go on to become one of the greatest cities of its era. Legend has it that this all started in 814 BC, when Dido, accompanied by her Phoenician entourage from Tyre, founded a colony on a point that protruded from the coast of Africa. With a chain of hills and surrounding coasts providing defensible terrain, its strategic placement at the center of the Mediterranean trade routes was excellent. The land was ruled by a local African king named Hyarbus, which was the only issue. Dido, according to legend, asked Hyarbus for land for a city, to which he mockingly replied that she might found her city on any area she could cover with an ox hide. Then, in a display of Punic cunning, Dido sliced the ox hide into thin strips, which she used to draw the outline of a claim that was big enough to support a whole new city. The name of the major hill of Carthage, the Byrsa hill, which means ox hide in Greek, preserves this story. Whether the tradition is true or not, archaeology appears to support the notion that some of the region's early settlement took place in the neighborhood of the Byrsa hill. Between the growing merchant port and the fortified acropolis, a mix of residential and commercial structures sprang up in these early years. Along with several temples and civic buildings, these grounds would have also housed a central agora for gatherings and market operations. There is evidence that strong fortifications were erected along the seafront in the 5th century BC, suggesting that an early wall probably guarded important areas of the developing town. However, little could deter the Carthaginian populace from escaping its borders as the fruits of an expanding empire grew. Every new generation that emerged sparked a fresh wave of land development. As far as the eye could see, fields, orchards, farmhouses, villas, roads, water canals, warehouses, workshops, stables, and more appeared. Before long, the descendants of the forefathers were intruding on the hills where they had been buried. Carthage had expanded to vast proportions by the time of the Punic Wars in the 3rd century BC, taking up much of the promontory and supporting an estimated 3.75% of the world's population at its zenith. By now, its population was made up of not just Phoenician immigrants, but also native Libyans, Numidians, Greeks, Italians, Iberians, Celts, and a myriad of other folk from the wider Mediterranean region, all of whom were somehow drawn to the multicultural city. The city would have been divided into several districts, though we are generally unable to determine its precise boundaries at this time. For the time being, we can at least outline a few broad topics of interest and take our time going over each one. The sea walls and the land walls are the two sets of the city's outside walls, and we can start with them. The former are significantly longer, covering an approximate distance of 25 kilometers. These seem to have been a series of robust stone walls, 10 meters high and 5 meters thick, with defensive and observation towers inserted every 5 meters. A number of gates provided access to the outside world, the largest of which were the enormous sea gates. Since these had 2 passageways, probably for entry and exit, they probably had the most traffic. After all, they served as one of the most direct routes from Carthage to the coasts, making them a key route used by a large number of commuter merchants and fishermen on their way to work. However, Carthage's land walls are the most striking. Even though there had probably been defenses on this flank for a while, Agathocles' invasion in 310 BC appears to have marked the conclusion of the Greco-Punic Wars and resulted in a significant upgrading. They are claimed to have been composed of 3 levels, according to Appian, who quotes Polybius. Their precise nature is open to interpretation, but we can gain a clearer understanding by drawing comparisons with the remnants of the neighboring walled city of Thapsus. Carthage's peripheral districts would have been located just inside its walls. Among them, the Megara was the most notable. Appian depicts it as a vast, semi-rural landscape that looked like this. Cite: In addition to deep ditches full of water running in every direction, it is planted with gardens and full of fruit-bearing trees divided off by low walls, hedges, and brambles. The amazing agricultural marvels of Carthage would have overwhelmed one with their sights and scents at this point. After all, these areas would have been cared for by not just some of Carthage's most accomplished arborists and gardeners, but also by its affluent people, who were known to have penned some of the most famous and comprehensive treatises on the subject in antiquity. Let's move in the opposite direction for the time being. We will cross the capital's ancient inner walls and make our way to the Acropolis, which is perched atop Byrsa Hill. The magnificent temple the Carthaginians erected in honor of Eshmoun is rumored to be the richest of their sanctuaries. There were numerous defenses around its perimeter, and the main way to get in was by a huge stairway that rose 60 stories above the coastal plains below. The Carthaginians would decide to take their last stand against the Roman invaders here because of its magnificent perspective of the city. A portion of the socioeconomic strata might be found living in residential areas situated on the mild inclines of the Byrsa. What was known as the Hannibal Quarter was probably higher up the hill, where the wealthy residences were located. The benefits of a better outlook and cleaner air naturally came with the higher position. The latter was probably significant, since it was common in ancient times to run sewage through channels that were cut alongside highways. However, it appears that indoor plumbing was included in at least one of the buildings in this region to lessen the impact of this. The evidence indicates that the layout of these affluent homes were akin to those of their Roman equivalents, featuring central courtyards and cisterns. The interiors would have undoubtedly been exquisitely ornamented with statues, paintings, mosaics, and other luxurious items. The impoverished houses were usually located a bit lower down the slope. Homes that were simpler would have been modest houses with flat roofs that provided a handy spot to hang laundry in the breeze and cool down. There would have been areas outside for people to work, unwind, and socialize with their neighbors in a setting akin to many other Mediterranean towns. Families would have adjusted the more private area inside to suit their needs and create a truly homey atmosphere. This could entail having a shrine with a favorite deity and decorating the walls with inherited ornaments. Some families may have even been able to move up the social scale over time, receiving illustrious visitors and tutors who may inspire their kids to pursue ever higher goals. However, just like in Rome, the impoverished who were packed into cramped apartment buildings could only dream of such progress. These were common in Carthage, with the biggest one standing 6 floors tall in the Old City neighborhood. Archaeology suggests that most of the time it would have been difficult to find your way around the Byrsa Hill. Streets tended to be narrow and winding, with only enough room for foot movement rather than carts in order to follow the topography. Nonetheless, there were important routes that facilitated travel. These were in the shape of 3 broad avenues that descended to the agora below. These would have provided one of the most striking views of the city for tourists. Nevertheless, as the Romans found out in their brutal battle up these streets, bordered with apartments on their march to the Acropolis, they would prove to be conduits into killing fields for invaders. Other significant public structures and temples honoring figures like Reshef, Baal Sathon, and Melkart might be found nearby. The only remnants of many of these temples are found in literary allusions, since they were totally destroyed after Carthage's destruction and the Acropolis's subsequent leveling. But there is one holy site that is still in existence in some capacity, Tophet. It served as a sanctuary for thousands of Carthaginian children, as well as a place of worship for Baal Hamon and Tanit. Numerous other residential and business zones were dispersed, frequently entwined. For example, prosperous Carthaginians may have operated modest businesses attached to homes or apartment complexes, out of which they may have conducted a tavern, restaurant, or workshop. Blacksmiths and metalworking locations could be found all across the city, suggesting that the metalworking business was thriving there. An extensive network of potters and craftspeople of various kinds was evident from the finding of a jeweler's studio that worked with semi-precious stones, obsidian, and coral. However, not every store could be easily located at these hubs. It was necessary for the more disruptive trades, such as tanners and fullers, to be situated outside of the town. That's all for this video. We will be back soon with another informative video. Don't forget to like and share this video. To keep exploring ancient history together, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Until next time!